This is Tipping Point Radio, and you're listening to The 42 Show. On today's episode, Morgan starts us off with a story of tragedy that he recently witnessed, and which left him with a difficult question. Have we as a society, culture, or even human race dehumanized and devalued our fellow human beings? How is it that we can see human suffering and just shrug our shoulders in disinterest? This conversation leads to talk of politics, Donald Trump, and getting to know your inner fascist. Just your typical show as three guys pursue the answers to life, the universe, and everything.
Dehumanization.
Dehumanization is what we're talking about.
I got a good story.
Okay.
Good story.
All right. Dehumanization it is.
Are you rolling?
Yeah, okay.
Right.
Oh, well, let's okay. I'm Craig Merriweather. I'm here with Morgan Boatman and
No, take two.
What?
Morgan Bowola.
He's the African cousin of Morgan Boatman.
I'm not cutting this out.
Okay, you're going to cut it out. You're going to do it again.
Okay.
Just me again.
All right. I'm Craig Merriweather. I'm here with Morgan Boatman and Brad Olson. And we're here to talk about dehumanization, as Morgan has a great story.
It's not a great story. It's actually a horrible story. It's a tragic story.
Okay.
So I'm on my way back on the train. I took the train to Los Angeles this time. And, which is a delight. It's great. Everybody has horror stories about the train.
I love the train.
But it's terrific. It's so unpretentious. And that's what I like about it. You just get on the train. It starts moving if it feels like it. If it's on time, if it feels like it. You get there, probably. And that's great. In this world of, well, I don't have Wi-Fi and I don't have this and I gotta have more data this month because get on the train and maybe you'll get there. Well, on the way back, he doesn't even get it. So on the way back from Los Angeles, the train leaves at, let's say 6 p.m. in the evening. It's already dark, so it's approaching winter. There's only a couple stops between here and Flagstaff, or LA and Flagstaff. So we're moving along. We stop in San Bernardino, which if you don't know is a little bit outside of Los Angeles. A couple of hours, I guess. By the train, a couple of days. No, we were on time. We were. Everything was flowing nicely. And we get moving out of San Bernardino, and I'm reading my book and sitting there comfortably, and I get a bad feeling, and the train stops. And I knew it before they even announced it, that we hit somebody. And we live in Flagstaff. I mean, this is recorded in Flagstaff, and we hear about this frequently because the train goes through here like 1,000 times a day. And
Yeah, we literally get like 80 to 100 trains a day moving through downtown.
Right down the middle of our town. And every once in a while you hear about a college student that didn't see the train or didn't hear the train. And there's all this controversy about the train blowing its horn or whatever. Well, now you guys reacted like actual human beings. You said, oh, I mean, imagine this huge thing that we're all on. Now we're back to the story, and it hit somebody, and whatever you believe in, I felt it. I knew that that's what happened, and it's something that I'm familiar with because we live in Flagstaff. So we stopped. It was maybe 5 minutes later. An announcement comes over the PA and says, there's going to be a delay, 25-minute, is kind of an odd time, 25-minute delay because, quote, a trespasser has been hit. So right away we go into, it's not a person, it's a trespasser. And again, in Flagstaff, if you go to the train station, it says do not trespass. And
You have to walk across the tracks.
This is train property. So now that makes sense because they don't want to make it emotionally scarring image over the PA. So a few minutes later, maybe 10 minutes later, I start hearing sirens. And, this is probably 10 p.m. now. This is kind of strange. So the train is sort of on a curve. And ahead of me, outside the dark window, I can see the head of the train. And all the sirens and flashing lights come to the head of the train. And then, because that's the nearest intersection. But then all the emergency people walk and drive past my window to the end of the train. And the implications are clear that, we'll go to the train and take care of this. No, the accident happened 200 meters behind me.
It takes a long time for a train to stop.
To stop a train.
Yeah.
So that's further visual. So now I've set up the picture. When the first announcement came on, and it wasn't, grave, you can understand the passengers were kind of, was somebody sleeping on the tracks? I mean, that's a strange idea. But right away, the whole Milgram sort of not wanting to take responsibility thing kicks in, right? We're on a vehicle, and I knew that we killed somebody, because you don't get injured with a train, I broke a fingernail because I got hit by a train. A few minutes later, the announcer comes on and says, okay, it's going to be a 2-hour delay for the emergency services, and she even mentioned the coroner, because there's been a fatality, which, didn't surprise me. But the surprising part was the way Craig reacted so delightfully. When I said 2-hour delay, he went, oh. Now, we have a train full of people. There's not tons of people on the train, but there's enough that I can hear everyone's conversation, and they're on their phones, talking to people, and they said, now we're going to be delayed. 2 hours. How inconvenient for me. One guy went as far as to say, on the telephone to, I think it was his mother, we should have just kept going.
Wow.
And people are making jokes about it, a la Milgram. What was some dumb person doing on the train tracks? Didn't he see it? And and giggling about it. And I realized that, this is my interpretation anyways, that we deal with death every day, but not really. We deal with a depiction of death that moves a story forward. So as you're watching TV or a movie, deaths occur, but they're always in cahoots with the story. And so we think we know what it feels like to deal with death and serious things, but we actually don't. We think that it's part of our story, that this person got hit by a train because it's part of our story. And that makes it okay. It makes it easy to laugh it off, or to joke about it, or to say, I'd like my story to actually be that we just keep on going. And the implications are that no matter what we hit, we should keep going because of my story. So I lived a real life, the discomfort, dealing with the discomfort of that level of human experience on the train. And it's not like I, broke out crying, but I would like to think that I recognized the gravity of the situation, and that either it was a horrible accident, or somebody felt so bad about their lives that they committed suicide with the train, which happens, or whatever it is, it was somebody we squished with our train. So it becomes a story of technology and of discomfort with human experience, and it was very interesting to me. So that's my story today.
Well, as a couple of things, my reaction when you said 2 hours. The first announcement was 25 minutes.
Right.
So I'm saying, okay, this guy got blunt force trauma, bounced off the train, kind of,
Yeah.
And when you said 2 hours, in my mind, it wasn't that, oh my God, you're going to be 2 hours later.
I know, I
but
totally
it was,
co-opted that, just for sake of the story.
but
The implications were that, yeah, it's
the
serious.
implication that this guy just didn't die from blunt force trauma bouncing off the train is that he got scattered.
Yeah,
And it's not just going to be a couple of photographs and put the body on a gurney and
move the train along.
and move the train. This is going to be something to have to deal with these people. And these people, this is 10:30, 11 o'clock at night at this point.
Right. Oh,
and
yeah.
they're going to have to set up lights, and they're going to have to investigate the scene
Right.
and clean up the scene.
Yes.
And getting hit by a train, even if it's only moving 20 miles an hour, 30 miles an hour, that's hardcore.
Oh, it is.
And in fact, I think there's a documentary or at least a story, I think it was in the San Jose Mercury News about these, the train engineers who hit people.
Ugh.
And just, they're scarred for life. They're screwed up big time. It's not just,
It's not an inconvenience.
No, it's not like, oh, now I got to hose off the train. These people
jeez.
probably see it.
Yeah.
Because you can see way far ahead of you.
And you
see
got that
there's a guy,
headlight.
you see a guy standing on the tracks, maybe with his back to you, and there's nothing you can do. You can't swerve. You can't stop. You put on the brakes, but a train going, depending on how long the train is, the train might take a mile and a half to actually come to a complete stop.
We must have not been going very fast, because
Yeah.
we were still, out of the window, I could see where they were busy
Yeah.
right there.
But there's a guy that's happened in Flagstaff a few years ago. There's a kid walking on the tracks, and we have two tracks, one going west and one going east, for eastbound trains and westbound trains, and so they can pass each other actually. And this kid was walking on one of the tracks. He thought the right directions, because when you jog on the other side of the road so you can see the traffic coming at you. I assume he thought he was walking on the right track. So he's walking, he had his headphones blaring and his dog with him. So there's no suicide implied.
Yeah.
But he had his headphones blaring and did not hear the train coming behind him honking its horn.
Oh, man.
And so this guy, and it's broad daylight, and the train engineer probably saw this guy from a mile away. He's coming into town. He's probably got binoculars. He wants to see what's going on, make sure there's no cars on the tracks or whatever.
Right.
Probably saw this kid a long time ago, started blaring his horn, and he even tried to stop. But the kid was blasting his music so loud and just didn't hear it, feel it in time. And because when you commit suicide, you don't take your dog with you, It's just, it was just, and I don't think anybody really said no, he didn't seem depressed. He just liked walking the tracks for his exercise or to walk his dog. And so that engineer, pure accident, not the engineer's fault, but he screwed up for life. And when my O for the 2 hours was like, okay, he just didn't kind of boom, hit something, and he's like, oh my God, what the hell was that? He probably saw this guy because he got those big spotlights on the front of the train. Probably watched this thing happen.
Yep.
And it probably was not pretty for him to see this go down. And he still has to be on that train. Or I don't know, maybe they swap out drivers when that happens or something. But
Yeah, imagine they have a procedure at this point.
yeah, and I'm sure that was, a week ago or so this happened to you?
Yeah.
So, the guy's probably still at home on paid leave or whatever, trying to figure out what it's all about. I don't think people really take into consideration when they jump into a train. Forget the people who are going to now be 2 hours delayed, but the trauma that's going to go into the driver who could do nothing about it. You're not going to move because you're blowing your horn, and he can't swerve, he can't stop. So he's just got to watch this thing happen. And that's got to be incredibly difficult to spend the rest of your life with. But you mentioned Milgram a couple of times. It kind of implies that one idiot on the train who has no feelings for other human beings kind of set the tone for other people who might not have felt the same way.
I can only speak to the people I heard.
Right.
And
I'm just wondering if people don't know how to react in a situation like that. It's not
That's
a family
exactly
member,
it.
it's not a friend, they didn't see it happen, they just heard about it over an intercom from a disembodied voice.
That's exactly my
and
point.
this other guy says, oh, what an inconvenience. And they're like, oh yeah, that's what it is. It's an inconvenience. Because they don't know how to understand the situation.
Well, I think we're breeding a culture of sociopaths, that that can't feel. We're teaching them through media and through sports and stuff that it's okay to, and through war and everything else, that it's okay, that death is, that it's not a big deal, that it has a place other than what it should be. It's I don't know. That's why you guys are here, so I can figure it all out.
Okay.
Well, that's our specialty.
Here's where the dehumanizing thing comes in my mind anyway, is that, first of all, there's some reflexive assumptions that are made about the victim. That he screwed up.
Yeah. But it's his fault.
It's his fault. That, let's face it, here in Flagstaff, if we hear about that, what are we going to think? An intoxicated transient or
Right.
a homeless person,
Right.
which is often the case. And so,
Essentially, he deserved it.
yeah. And all of that dehumanizing, I think it's very ironic because in some ways I suspect that dehumanization is a trope or a function for the preservation of our own humanity, right? I'm still alive.
I'm deserving of life.
Yeah, and I don't want to die.
Right.
And I don't want to think about dying. And so this guy has to have screwed up in some major fashion. Because that then makes my continued existence more likely. But if it's a random accident, then my immortality is always in play.
Yes.
And
And I think you put your finger right on the origin of religion.
Yeah.
I want some order in the universe so that I don't have to worry about breaking my neck accidentally.
Yeah.
If I am a good person, then God won't kill me.
Yep.
But it comes down to these random accidents. You're live a healthy, wonderful, good life, and you're standing under a tree, the tree branch breaks and knocks you on your head, and you're done. That was so random, and you had to be at that precise point in time for that branch to break in that exact location. And it seems so.
Humans, we're so diabolically order-driven that we apply an order even to that, though.
Man, but see, you look at that and think, well, gosh, that was pretty incredible for all those events to have happened, and to get that guy to that one spot at that particular time, 20 seconds either direction, he would have been fine. I'm just saying, it's like, and people look at that and think, well, then maybe people are marked, and when it's your time, it's your time.
Even in telling your story, though, you're applying a significance that, well, if he had been a foot to the left, then it wouldn't have happened. But that doesn't make it significant. That just makes it...
Exactly.
Makes it, period, yeah.
But I'm saying this is how religions and that thinking gets going. There has to be an explanation on why he had to be sitting under that tree, or why the car decided to break down right on the train tracks. Electronic door locks.
We love significance. We love applying significance.
And it lets us know that we're okay. You see, if we can attribute some sort of causality to that event, then I can take steps to avoid that in my life, and I won't have to die.
But only by doing magical things.
Well, there's a great Tolstoy's novella, The Death of Ivan Ilyich. It's a marvelous meditation on this existential dread. And in it, Ilyich he's like a judge. He's some, upper middle class member of Russian society right before the revolution. He is hanging curtains in his house one day, and he falls off the ladder and he bangs his side on the doorknob, and he develops this wound that won't heal, and it gets worse and worse and sicker, and in those days there was an old wives' tale that you could get cancer or something like that from a hard blow to the body. Long story short, Illich is dying, and he's having a hard time accepting it. And he's talking to himself, and he says, "I'm an educated man. I know," and it's that old Latin syllogism, Caius is a man, men are mortal, therefore Caius is mortal. And he's thinking about this, and then he says, "But I'm not Caius." And that's what we do. And we want to avoid this at all costs. And now, so there are two events, I think, that contribute to dehumanization, particularly in our culture. One is mortality, that existential threat. The other one is consumerism, which is equally dehumanizing.
How do you mean?
Because now people aren't people are consumers. And they can be manipulated to spend money, because money is the most important thing in a consumer-driven culture, which we indisputably are. We don't manufacture much anymore. We consume. People are only necessary in terms of their buying power. And if you can't buy something, there's no need for it.
Yeah.
And so therefore we don't care about the transient alcoholic homeless guy who stands on the railroad tracks at 2 o'clock in the morning and gets run over, because he's not contributing to the economy anyway.
God, that's awful.
And that's the awfulness of dehumanization.
Yeah.
And one of the results of that is there's a kind of a creeping dehumanization where if you make a mistake, it's all on you. It's too bad. You don't get to make mistakes either in a society like this. And those mistakes you live with forever. And whatever great things you've done, there's a moment or two maybe of acknowledgement if you're lucky. But those, as the old saying is, those are written in water. And the mistakes are written in stone. and this dehumanization makes a really... the reason we have all these post-apocalyptic movies is because of this dehumanization that we're experiencing in this culture.
Because we feel that we want some just cause that we can become, that's worthy, like fighting zombies, or...
Well, I don't think we want to recognize the reality of this dehumanized...
That we're already living in the age of zombies?
Yeah, we're already zombies. You buy the Louis Vuitton bag and the Gucci shoes and all that, and then you're somebody. It's a stunning thing to me that people don't... And I end up talking about this all the time in the consulting room. People don't really seem to want to accept their own mortality. And I feel that in myself. I don't want to resist that.
Sure.
I don't want to, think I could be like Elvis sitting on the toilet one morning and drop over dead, It's not a pretty picture.
So a question is, this dehumanization, is that a conscious effort on the part of those in charge? Or is it just, we're getting used to, look at the movies back in the 50s, the cowboy movies, it was one-on-one fast draw shootout in the street.
Yeah.
And now, we have these movies where the catastrophe movies where an entire building of 3,000 people gets leveled by a tidal wave. So the destruction and the human loss has been upped, and we just shrug our shoulders at the end and say, that was pretty cool, and wait for the next one.
I think you're speaking to desensitization. But every time we want to feel a thrill, it has to be bigger and worse and more powerful. Because we're addicted to it, just like a...
Right, and so when something happens on the train that happened to you, you don't know this guy, and you didn't actually see it. You're just hearing an intercom announcement about it. Yes, you're desensitized.
It has virtually no effect to anybody, except that, now I'm inconvenienced.
I think it's an interesting question that you raise, because certainly, to use Morgan's example, the Amtrak administrators certainly knew there was going to be a 2 or 3 hour delay when they made the 25-minute delay announcement. You know?
Yes.
So there's an element of cynicism involved there.
And I knew it too. It was like,
yeah.
even no matter what happens, nothing takes 25 minutes.
Now, you could argue that, I suppose, they're understanding human nature in these situations and have lots of experience, and people are going to be upset and complain and all that stuff. And so
breaking it to us incrementally.
Yeah. But, I mean, that's rather cynical, you know, to say, oh, sorry, you know, we hit some trespasser and it's going to be 25 minutes before we get it. Come on.
That's true.
You know, it's going to take 10 minutes for EMS to roll up.
Totally.
At least, especially if you're in the middle of nowhere. You know.
So there's this notion that human life is cheap, and particularly if that human life isn't performing
Oh man!
within accepted parameters, right?
Yeah. Deserves it
Yeah.
because he's not playing the game.
Yeah. I mean, Louis C.K. does a routine. God, he's hilarious. If you guys don't know Louis C.K., he's well worth listening to. He does this thing where he's driving along and this woman kind of turns into his lane a little bit, so he has to make, a slight correction. And he says he gets enraged. And he's like swearing at her and, wishing her to die because she made him go like this, turn the wheel slightly. And he says, and I want her kids to grow up as orphans because what's wrong with me? But that's the thing, our lives are so insignificant in this consumer-driven machine that we've created in this society that we overcompensate by making ourselves the most important thing in the world. And if we have to swerve out of our lane to avoid somebody, that's just an outrage.
Yeah.
Because we have no power anywhere. And we're all dehumanized. We're cutting out arts programs right and left from school curriculum because there's not enough money. And those are the things that make us human. If we don't understand that there's beauty in the world, or that we can create beauty, that there's beauty in our own story, whatever it is, that's what makes us human. And if we don't have that mechanism or that understanding anymore as a culture, well, we might as well be, as Richard Dawkins says, wet robots.
At what point does it become significant to a culture? I mean, arguably, culture is based on an awareness that we have value. Otherwise, why would there be a culture? At what point does dehumanization destroy a culture? When does the inconvenience of stopping and cleaning up become too big a problem, and we do just keep on going after we hit somebody?
Well, I think this is one of the very questions that Kafka, for instance, wrestled with in his writing. One of the effects of this increasing dehumanization is an increasing bureaucracy. And there are rules everywhere now. Right?
So we don't even trust each other.
No, we don't. And you can see it in little tiny ways, just standing in the grocery store. Like, I was in the grocery store, my daughter needed something for school and she forgot to mention it, so I go to Bash's last night, and I'm standing in line, and something was clearly mismarked on the woman's groceries before me.
Oh, right in front of you in line.
Yeah. And so there's a big, delay while they tried to sort that out. And she was clearly right, to complain about this.
Yeah, it's like a pencil for $10.
Yeah.
Something is clearly wrong.
And I mean, the price was on the item that she was buying. It didn't ring up that way, and they were trying to sort it out.
Okay.
So eventually the line behind me gets pretty long. And people are pissed off at her. They're not pissed off at the store.
Now, that's interesting, yes. That's, this is maybe a difficult subject, but a couple of times talking about this, I've realized that this leads to the problem of blaming the victim in all cases, even in such horrible things as rape. It's like,
Right.
something she did caused that. Instead of blaming the perpetrator, or the grocery store in this case, we blame the person who's making waves,
Right.
you know. Which we don't have to get into that anymore, but that's what's, you know, it goes through society and culture all the way from the most ridiculous things, a price tag, to the most heinous things.
Exactly. And we used to be all about making waves in this country.
That
was our reason
that's
for
a
existing.
definition of our country, yeah.
And now, anybody that makes waves is a problem child.
Ooh.
You know. And that, I believe, is a part of this dehumanization. That founding document, the Declaration of Independence, declared the primacy of human spirit. And now we've got that Supreme Court decision from a couple of years ago that displayed the primacy of corporate speech. And corporations are individuals now. There's in my mind, no better example of an increasing dehumanization than that.
To actually give humanity a way to an institution.
Yeah.
You are not human, but if you do some paperwork, we'll give you a little humanity back.
We'll give you a card that says you are recognized by the nation state as a human being.
It's like all those Indian tribes that had to prove they were Indian tribes.
Yeah.
You know, you knew the famous ones like the Navajo or the Hopi or the Cherokee were fine, but there's 600 different nations, and they to get recognized by the U.S. government as a native tribe, they had there's all sorts of things, language, and that's still being used, and a certain amount of people still living in a certain area, and all these things they had to go through years and years of paperwork and documentation that they were
just to let them live where they've always lived.
Yeah, they did in Death Valley. We were just in Death Valley recently, and there's a tribe, the only tribe that's allowed to live in a national park, and they went 30 years trying to prove themselves that even though they've been living there for 1,000 years in the same spot, they had to prove that they were who they were, and this is where they've lived for 1,000 years. And
It reminds me of, I don't know why I'm thinking about comedians today, but maybe they're the new public intellectuals, right? That Eddie Izzard does a bit in one of his routines where he talks about the British, expanding their empire, and they go to this faraway place, and the guy sticks a flag in the ground and he says, "I claim this land for the Queen." And somebody says, "Well, we already live here." And he says, "Do you have a flag?"
Yeah.
No, we don't, but no flag, no country. It's ours.
Yeah.
yeah, that's pretty much how it goes.
Identifying with a symbol over
the existence of real human beings.
Yes.
Yeah, well, that's the whole thing Columbus discovered in America. A nation that had already, hundreds of thousands of people living on it for thousands of years. Let alone the Chinese or the Vikings having beaten them by 30 or 50 years.
Of centuries.
Century, yeah. It's just how, it's the whole thing. The winner gets to tell the story. The winner gets to tell how history will be written. And it is always written in their favor.
It is true, and I think there is a tidiness to dehumanization that is, I think, appealing, which is one of the things that makes it so effective, right? I mean, because you can't just say this is so prevalent because of all these bad things. I mean, there's got to be something appealing about it, right, to make it endure, or continue. And I think there's a tidiness to it. It brings order in some ways, and it's an awful order. because it comes at the expense of human spirit. But
Does
it's
that mean
an order
we need it
nonetheless.
despite? We need answers to such an extent that we're willing to
Yeah, I think answers,
trade in our
comfort,
humanity.
security. I mean, if you look at New York City, particularly Manhattan these days, it's almost like Disneyland. You know, you can go and you can go to Chinatown, Little Italy. You can go to the Lower East Side. You can even go into that. You know, on the Lower East Side, there's this enormous housing project. It's like it's all clean and in the 70s, you know, it was an urban jungle. I mean, you know, you could smell urine and people were taking a shit on the sidewalk and it was, you know, it was a mess. Riding the subway was, you know, taking your life in your hand. And what has happened with an increasing order that comes from valuing a bureaucracy over human spirit is that you get this nice, marvelous place you can walk around in now, and tourists can go anywhere and feel safe.
Money
again. And then there's a few voices that you'll hear that kind of lament the loss of the old, you know, chaos and danger and, you know, the chance of being accosted as you're walking down the street, you know, in the middle of the night or whatever. There's something that's hard to reconcile between being human and being safe.
Yes.
And dehumanization creates some safety. Because these people now who are threats can be just taken right off the board. You know, they can't even play.
Humanity is messy.
It's messy. It's really messy, and it always has been.
And that's why we've come up with so many ways of dealing with it culturally. And as we globalize, we're tending toward the tidier answers, which are more and more control.
Yeah, I think so. And then we sacrifice that. I mean, just, God, you don't even have to go to New York. Go to the airport. We have sacrificed individuality for safety and control.
Yes.
I got to take off my shoes every damn time I go to the airport because one knucklehead unsuccessfully tried to make a bomb out of his tennis shoes. And we go through this kabuki theater of security at the airport because it's not making us more secure. It's making us more frustrated. It's making us feel less human. It's making us feel humiliated often. But it's not making us safer.
And it's making us used to and comfortable and familiar with being processed.
And that's where your question, finally I get back to it right after.
Oh, it's great
years. That is there some propagation of this by control structures in this culture? I think absolutely. I think absolutely there is. The more that we can feel less like individuals, the better it is for these. And I don't think it's individuals necessarily that have all the power, but I think it's these control structures.
The system itself. Yeah. What are they getting out of it? They're getting money from us. They're getting fewer surprises.
It's the primary job of a bureaucracy, in my opinion, to just simply create more bureaucracy.
It's like an organism at some point, not made up of individuals, just made up of its prime directive.
Yeah. That's good. That's like the Borg in the Star Trek series. That's what they are. They're just they're literally dehumanized and bureaucrats. They all think with one mind.
Yeah, they all have the same, no matter what their job is, they all have the same directive. So what do we do about it? Is it too late? Is it too late to save humanity? Do we all move to a third world country that doesn't have guidelines?
No, because we don't want to live in third world country.
But that's what we're saying. I mean,
we want the ease and safety of
then forget it.
First world.
If that's what you want, then everything's going your way.
No, I think there will come a time though when the human spirit itself just simply has to throw off that boundedness and that.
But it's going to do it catastrophically.
Yes, it will.
There's
I
no
have
reason
doubt. I
to
have no
change
doubt.
it
It's going to do it. Look,
before that.
we're just whistling through the graveyard in lots of ways in terms of climate change, in terms of population growth. You know, who thinks about that on a daily basis? The problem is if we don't think about it, it's going to take care of itself. Population growth, listen, we're reaching carrying capacity on the planet. There'll be some catastrophic event that reduces population, whether it's disease or war or whatever.
And that'll just add to our reasons to dehumanize. So there'll be a divergence of, well, we need even more control. We need even more separation from those who are not worthy.
But I think there's something about the human spirit that rises up in resistance to that eventually. That the cost is too high for this security and safety and comfort, and then there will be these revolution-like movements that happen. I mean, yesterday was it yesterday? It was the 5th?
Guy Fawkes Day.
Guy Fawkes Day, right? Perfect example. The nice, tidy order of Protestantism displaces Catholicism, and that's not, sustainable in a lot of ways, because part of the attraction of Catholicism is its messiness, right? It's very. It's unconscious polytheism is part of the attraction of it.
It's unadmitted. I like that. I never thought of it quite that way.
I think that, it's not going to go on forever. I don't know that we'll see anything happen in our lifetime, but I wouldn't be surprised in our children's lifetimes if they see something.
Well, I think it comes down to the individual, because it's dehumanization and what Morgan witnessed on the train, the idea that we're more important in our own mind than our neighbor.
Yeah.
You know, that there's this hierarchy, and you have placed yourself, again, in your own mind, somewhere near the top, and these other people are an annoyance and get in your way. They get the package with the wrong price on it at the grocery store, and all hell breaks loose at the counter because this huge operation can have 2 registers open. They can only have 1 open, and so that backs up the line for about 5 minutes, and that's an inconvenience to my importance. Be it if they also have an item in their basket that's overpriced or priced wrong, they'll take care of it because, well, that's their prerogative, because I will not be ripped off by the man. And but it's this idea that maybe we're better than other people in our own mind. Not we are, but in your own mind, you're thinking, well, this inconveniences me because I'm an important person and I have important things to do, important TV to watch, important video games to play.
I think that's the entire raison d'etre of the Tea Party. You just articulated it right there. That I am a person of consequence and I am a person of power, regardless of my socioeconomic status, which is, often in the lower reaches of SES. They identify with the Donald Trumps of the world, because they're important.
Yeah. Well, that's what's an interesting thing about Donald Trump, as we're speaking of this, as he's making waves in the Republican Party for in summer of 2015, and although his poll numbers seem to be going down, is that even though he does not live amongst the majority of Americans, he has the ability to say whatever he wants because he does not care. And there's a certain freshness to that, and that people seem to enjoy. I think they enjoy the train wreck, and it's good entertainment, but there's also, I think, a certain aspect to he doesn't have to kowtow to the money people, and he doesn't have to kowtow to the Republican Party officials. he's got enough money in the bank he can miss a couple $100 million to spend on this campaign, so he doesn't have to ask for fundraising. He doesn't have to go to meetings and be told what to say. He can say whatever he wants. And because he's so entertaining, he gets the press. And that's refreshing to a lot of people, that he can just like say people are ugly, or say people are fat, or say people are stupid, and get away with it because he doesn't have to answer to anybody. And we like that idea of not being, because we all have to answer to somebody.
Yeah. Well,
whether it's our bosses or our, whatever authority figure, we have in our lives. He does not. He's at the very tippy top because of his money situation, and he doesn't have to answer to anybody. And the biggest threat that he imposed upon the Republican Party is that he would go independent. And they finally had to negotiate that plea where he signed the paper saying he wouldn't go independent.
Listen, I don't for a minute think that Donald Trump wants to be president. I think getting the Republican nomination would be catastrophic for Donald Trump. I mean, he's building his brand.
Oh yeah.
This is going to pay huge dividends to him in the future, and that's why you see him sort of slowly withdrawing from this process. He doesn't want to be president.
Well, I think the same with is it Mike Huckabee and Ben Carter. I don't think these guys really want to be president. I think they want to increase their speaking fees.
Yeah, I don't think.
And this is free publicity. And I mean, who heard of Ben Carter before a few months ago? And now he's everywhere.
It's Carson.
Is it Carson?
Yeah.
See, that's how much I pay attention.
Well,
Okay, Ben Carson. My apologies.
I don't think we're going to be able to use that old phrase, it ain't brain surgery anymore after this lunatic.
But again, it's just like I don't see politics coming out of that guy. He's kind of vague on what he says. I'm sure he's getting more, as he's now risen in the polls, he's quickly getting policy papers together. But, when they were trying to ask him a few weeks ago about who was interviewing him, and they were asking him about raising the debt ceiling, and he wouldn't answer the question. He just, I'm going to make these people work harder and figure it out.
Yeah.
It's like, that's not how it works. And I again, it's just like, I think a lot of these people in the race are just trying to get exposure so they can increase their speaking fees from 10,000 to 30,000.
I think it's oddly enough, Donald Trump and Ben Carson are examples of what we're talking about. They are leading the polls now in the Republican nomination or in the Republican primaries because they're seen as human. They're not bureaucrats. Everybody else on that roster is a bureaucrat. The Ted Cruzes, the Marco Rubios, the Bobby Jindals. These guys are just mindless, numb bureaucrats. I mean, I gotta wonder how many lockers was Ted Cruz shoved into to just become the awful human being that he is right now,
Oh, that's great. That's great. Everything has a consequence. And blame those bullies at school for creating all the awful people.
But I think that Donald Trump and Ben Carson, they bring a kind of humanity to the. Now, it's not an attractive kind of humanity, but it's a humanity nonetheless that these other guys are just robotic.
Well,
they get to say things that we want to say and we can't.
Yeah.
Well, we don't even really want to say those things. We just want to hear something different. And that's like,
you
like
want
the movies.
Because you're in your home watching the news on TV and you're yelling at the screen, "You're so stupid, I can't believe you're a politician." But we can't go out into polite society and say those things. But he can.
But these aren't people that we aspire to be like.
No, not at all. We don't like them, and I can't.
So why do we idolize them? Why?
I don't think we idolize them. I think we
them?
just we say, yes, finally somebody's saying it.
Saying something,
yeah. And it's not attractive, and we think finally.
Well, they're not
because he doesn't. Yeah, he has no consequences.
They're not beholden to this bureaucracy, to this increasingly dehumanized culture.
See, they're making waves, and that's what we were.
Yeah.
Well, it's like the Freedom Caucus in the Republican Party, the 40 or so Republicans in the House that are just trying to throw monkey wrenches into everything, and the Republicans can't keep control of them. It's the same thing. It's like they're there to be instigators of chaos because they want their own way.
I think it's fascinating, frankly, to watch, because I think what we're seeing is the dissolution of a major political party that's been strong for over 150 years. Mm-hmm. And it's fallen apart. I think this is the death rattle of the Republican Party. It's going to be interesting to see what comes out of it. I don't think this election cycle is going to be the end of it, but I think they're on their last legs. I mean, even Hillary Clinton is an Eisenhower Republican, you know, and Bernie Sanders, he's given a talk about socialism this morning. I haven't heard it yet, but it should be interesting. He's more of an Adlai Stevenson Democrat. I mean, we've shifted so far in our political ideologies that the parties themselves aren't recognizable by the old standards anymore. It's good theater, I have to say that.
And it is theater. And why are we so interested in those people and not the guy that got hit by the train?
Because we want to identify with people who appear to have it figured out and who appear to have some power, because we don't experience power in our lives for the most part. And we don't want to be that guy hit by the train because he made all the wrong decisions.
Yeah, we might be wrong decisions away from walking in front of a train ourselves. Yeah. And here's this rich guy with a bunch of beautiful women on his arm saying whatever he wants, and then going off and playing golf at one of his 50 golf courses. And it's like, okay, that's a more interesting story, watching that guy, than seeing a lot of our own lives in the guy who walks in front of the train.
You know, just as an aside, I find it so curious that there haven't been any stories about Donald Trump and his relationships with, shall we say, those questionable characters of the shady underbelly of New. I mean, this guy has been in the construction business for how long?
In New York. And New Jersey. Yeah. You know, I think if it gets to the point, I never thought the Republican Party took him seriously. They thought he was just a summer fling, and were amazed at his poll numbers, and were just waiting for him to die out, because I don't think they took him seriously either, until his poll numbers never dropped, and they just got bigger. Every gaffe that guy made, every ridiculous comment he put out there, his poll numbers just kept rising. And I think the American public took the Republican Party by surprise by just eating it up. But I think they're just waiting for the guys to start falling to the wayside. I think people are going to get tired of. I think they already are getting tired of Donald Trump. I don't see his name in the news that much anymore. His poll numbers are dropping now. Ben Carson is the flavor of the week, and soon something will. If the Republican Party doesn't want him, they will find something on him.
All he's got to do is keep talking.
Oh, he's going to do. Well, yeah. But I think eventually the Republican Party will get down to the two they want. They will find something on Ben Carson if he goes too far, and they will take him down, or whoever. It's pretty much, I think, a given who they've already decided a couple of guys they want to run, and they just want these other 14
That's pretty
people.
cynical, Craig. You think they've got all that we're just white mice in a maze, and they just give us treats and.
It goes down to, we did that episode a while ago on conspiracies, and yeah, I don't think everything goes according to plan, but I think if they don't want you there, they'll take you out.
Well, that's a good callback, actually, and I hadn't thought of that, but I do think that the increasing interest in conspiratorial types of thinking is in fact related to this dehumanization that we're experiencing. Somebody's got to be responsible for this, and it has to be a plan. It works way too well for it to just be a random accident, right?
And it's benefiting a certain group of people way too much
Yeah.
for them not to.
Follow the money. No benefits.
Yeah, you get I'm wearing out my politics, I suppose, in this session. But it seems like money, particularly a lot of money, if we talk about wealth, and individual human spirit seem to be kind of fundamentally incompatible. And I think that's one of the reasons why Bernie Sanders is showing some life on the Democratic side of things, because he's addressing that. Mm-hmm. And what's empowering is not the disempowerment of corporate America, but the empowerment of individual human spirit. And I think that's what is so attractive about his message, at least for those who are attracted to it. That's all I got.
But every culture comes up with a form of money. So is every culture doomed to walk this path of eventual ultimate dehumanization and dilapidation?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good question. I don't know. I kind of think if there's not long-term thinking involved, the answer is probably yes. But if you think, again, that old saw about, thinking 7 generations ahead, if we did that as a culture, we'd probably avoid this. But, immediate gratification is a hard thing to resist.
Well, immediate gratification and safe and easy. I mean, if it...
Apparent safe and easy, though.
Well, otherwise we just all hike off into the mountains and live like mountain men. Or occasionally you see those photos of the supposed native tribes down in South America that have never seen other humans. They take those aerial shots of these tribes, and it's like, well, why aren't we all doing that? Yeah. Because it's difficult. I mean, it's as easy as it is not to do the 9 to 5. You're finding food every day. You're dealing with.
But your comment about it being apparent, I think, is well taken, because there is a kind of crypto-fascism in all this stuff, where at any given moment, while we're enjoying this safety and comfort and security, if you're not the right person in the right place,
yes,
that's all taken away.
You're going to be hit by a train.
Yeah.
Either a real train or
the metaphorical.
Or you're going to be so discouraged you'll walk in front of a train.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's the other thing of the dehumanization that I don't think
we
have time to really talk about, but it's like how demoralized this society can make you feel if you're not, quote unquote, important enough to be on TV.
The fascism doesn't originate from above us. It originates in us. We have to be our own fascists before we design a culture that we can give that power to. We have to be comfortable with it. We have to feel like, well, I don't want to deal with that messy humanness of me anymore. So we didn't wake up in this world. We created this. And not just our parents and our parents' parents, but every day, we create the structures that we live in.
I think that's a beautiful point. I mean, even a great point to end on is you're responsible for your own inner self-worth. And don't look to society, TV, or who has enough money or more toys to let yourself know you're all right. Otherwise, you do end up walking in front of a train. It's you got to be responsible for your own happiness inside. And if you don't have the money of Donald Trump or the fame or glory that's bestowed upon you by the outside world, you got to figure out a way to create it on the inside. Be your own inner fascist.
I was listening until then.
Right?
No?
No? Did I get it wrong?
As usual, Craig.
Oh, God. Damn it. King gets it.
Yeah,
Good.
there's going to be black helicopters following us home after this one.
Nah, nobody's listening.
Maybe our one listener works for the FBI.
Our one listener is an NSA guy.
Keep on making those shows, guys.
We know where you live.
We got a cell in Guantanamo for you.